there isn't a great way to do attendance on Zoom, right? Like you can tell, like Scott just said, everybody please put something in chat so we know you're here. You can pull up the participants window and you can take a screen capture of how many people are here, but you might have to do that, you know, if 2 more people join in a couple of minutes, we'd have to do that a second time. So those are all things to keep in mind. I will be sharing those links again because chat record stuff is only as it only exists historically for whenever someone joins. So if someone joins right now and I just shared a link before they joined, they won't see any of it. So another thing to keep in mind. And then most of the session will be going off of today using a slide deck that I'm also going to share the link to, and you'll also see it shared in the document that's the sign-in. So there's the slide deck link. I'll introduce myself. My name's Emily Weerts. I'm based in Austin, Texas. I use she, her pronouns. And I have an education background where I've worked in museums and science centers and nonprofits, doing mostly informal science and engineering and technology program management. And I quit my full-time job last summer and have been doing consulting and a bunch of interesting projects since then. And at the beginning of the pandemic, it occurred to me that a lot of folks were going to be needing to be on Zoom or some kind of virtual communication tool in a way that we hadn't before. So I purchased a Zoom account. I'm using the paid pro account, which is the $15 a month or $150 a year account, and have learned how to use it pretty well and have taught, by my estimate, over 750 people how to use it since March. So hopefully I can answer questions that you all might have, and also hopefully you will have questions that I don't know the answers to yet, and I can email you out the answers after this. I've been working with lots of educators, whether they're formal classroom teachers or informal educators, or now, like Scott mentioned, kind of in the break, like parents that are at home that need to help get their kids connected to their classes and things like that. So lots of great stuff to share with y'all right now. And just before we kick things off with the formal presentation, I wanted to kind of take the feel for the room and ask y'all how experienced you are using Zoom. And we're going to use the nonverbal feedback, which is set up on the Zoom account. So this is a thing you need to turn on in your Zoom settings. And it has been turned on. We're on Trisha's account right now, and she has turned them on, which is great. So if you open the participants window, the participants list, by going to the bottom of your screen, there's a little icon that looks like 2 people and probably has the number 18 next to it. And if you click on that, you'll see a list of everybody. And then at the bottom, there's like a yes, no, go slower, go faster, or more button. So I'm going to paste this question in the chat as well, but please use the nonverbal reaction feature in the participants list to tell me how experienced you are using Zoom. So if you use Zoom all the time and you're hosting public sessions constantly, you feel comfortable with most of the settings, go ahead and use the Go Faster React. It's like, maybe you should be teaching this session, so go faster. That's the little blue double arrow React. If you're sometimes hosting Zoom session, you often attend Zoom meetings, and you know some of the features, but not everything, go ahead and use the yes green checkbox. If you've attended some Zoom sessions but not hosted many and feel like you have a lot to learn, go ahead and put the Go Slower React. That's the little gray arrow. And if you feel like a total beginner, yay, thank you for coming here. Thank you for being here. Hopefully you'll learn a lot. Maybe this is your first Zoom session. That happens to me a lot in a lot of the spaces I work in. And maybe you don't even know how you got here. It's 10 a.m. on a Monday during the pandemic. Go ahead and use the raise hand react. And a note about the raise hand react, if you're a host or a co-host, you don't have that react, but I also hope that my co-hosts and hosts have used Zoom before because they're helping me with things. So hopefully that is the case. So yeah, a lot of folks are feeling pretty mid-level, mid-high confidence in their Zoom abilities, which is awesome. Thank you so much. A couple folks may be interested in a little bit taking it slow and learning some new things and being oriented to the features. I love that. Sounds really great. One more pasting of a link again. Thank you all for using that. The nice thing is I can see, I'm not sure what it looks like on your view, but I can see that there are 7 people that reacted with yes, 4 that reacted with go slower, 2 that reacted with go faster. So it's not quite polling, but it, you know, maybe it can be used in that way. And again, that's a feature you have to turn on, and maybe it's a useful tool for you to orient your students for. The other nice thing, I'm going to go ahead and clear everybody's. If you click on that more button, there's like a thumbs up, a thumbs down, a clapping hands, and then a mug that can say that you, if you hover over it, it says need a break, and then the clock, which says suggests away. And so you could define what those icons mean in any of your sessions, which is kind of useful. Yeah. Here is a link to our slide deck again. Hi, Marty, great to see you. And I am going to share my screen super quickly to give y'all a Zoom orientation very quickly. So hang on a second, and it's going to like force you to look at it in full screen, and you can, at the top of the screen, select, if you're on a computer, select that you exit full screen, and it might be a little bit less disorienting. But I'm looking at slide 3 on the slide deck. Y'all seeing that? Pretty cool. So really quickly, at the bottom of your screen, if you're on a computer, you have a mute button, a start stop video button, a button to see the participants list. That's also where you can rename yourself, a chat button, a share screen button, and then the reactions that open the clap and thumbs up button, and then your leave button if you need to exit. I value engagement, so if possible, turn your video on. I like to say that, especially when I'm working with students, just because you know, I would love to see your faces, and also I totally understand that it could be you're joining from a space where you don't feel very comfortable sharing your whole chaotic home, or maybe it's also slowing your internet down having your video, or you're not in a place where it's easy to connect. So no worries if you are not feeling like turning your video on, but you can pop in and out too. That's great. If anybody has questions about any of these features, go ahead and put them in the chat. And I'm going to launch a poll really quick in a second where y'all, this is, I try to condense down, I do a lot of Zoom trainings. I probably all of the info to play with Zoom richly and deeply and get into breakout rooms and explore that feature is probably, by my estimation, two 2-hour trainings, so about 4 hours. So we're gonna do as much as we can in the next about 50 minutes, but we might not get to everything, and I will send you resources for that, and I also will invite you to some other trainings I have upcoming. But in the interest of maybe not having time to cover everything, I'm gonna open a poll in just a second where y'all are gonna select which of these topics are the priority for this session. So I broke it down into 4 categories: security, facilitation, engagement, and usability. So security, pretty straightforward: how to make your sessions more secure, how to make them, I would not say Zoom bomb proof, but maybe a little bit less likely to be Zoom bombed, and just understanding what the features are for that. Facilitation, best practices for if you are presenting or hosting a call. Engagement, tips and resources to encourage attendee participation. Things like what we just did with the nonverbal feedback reactions, like getting folks to participate, engage, give you some information so it doesn't just seem like you're talking to yourself about math or whatever you teach in your own headset. And then usability is just a kind of a catch-all term. Some of them are actual accessibility things, like I talk about closed captioning in Zoom, which, spoiler alert, it's not great. But some of them are just more like tips for making it a little bit friendlier and a little bit easier to use for the facilitators and the participants. So I'm going to close my screen share right now, and I'm going to launch this poll, and y'all tell me what you're most excited about learning today. security tips and tricks, facilitation best practices, engagement, tips for usability. Give you a few seconds to get on there and do that. While you're doing that, I'm going to also share a general link. All of these slide decks and some videos from my past trainings can be found on my website. So if you want to head over there, they're just totally always available. And at any point, I don't know why that didn't make it a link, that's okay. It's just wildlysupportive.com/Zoom. So if you need to refresh any of these things, and all my contact info and stuff is there too. Cool, we have quite a few people who have voted, which is awesome. And I'm going to end the poll and share the results. So it looks like folks are most excited about engagement, followed by facilitation and usability. So that's the order I'm going to do this presentation in. We'll start with the engagement options, then we'll jump to facilitation. If we have time, we'll get to usability and then security stuff. All the slides are there. My slides have a lot of words on them. That's because I like talking and writing, and also it's another accessibility thing, so you'll have access to all of that information afterwards too. I'm going to stop the share of the poll, and going into the slide deck, I am going to screen share. Remember, if you need any help with the tech stuff, go ahead and write that in the chat. If you need help opening the chat, there should be a toolbar at the bottom of your screen. If you're using a computer, if you're joining with a phone or tablet, it's probably at the top. There's a little chat box that looks like a speech bubble, so go ahead and click on that, and you should see all the good chat stuff. And again, I'm going to share my screen, so it's going to jump y'all into full screen mode as we talk about engagement. So here we go with that. So engagement is section 3. So it starts on slide 15. If you're just looking at this in your own space, that's where I'm at. And the 4 things I'm going to highlight for engagement are chat, polls, annotation, and breakout rooms. So pretty quickly, the chat features obviously are a way to stay connected, and especially on a call where there's lots of folks with their videos off, I think it's a great way to engage and have people be able to chime in and contribute. And it can be a lot to manage and moderate and kind of pay attention to. Also, there isn't a way in the Pro account. Remember, I'm talking about the Pro account for Zoom. So it's the cheapest paid account. It's $15 a month, $150 a year. It is not the enterprise, business, or education account. So there are some at those much higher levels, like the education account's really for like school districts. There are some administrator tools that the Pro accounts won't have, and I'm not familiar with them because I myself am not a school district. So there are great resources for those. If you have questions about that, go ahead and write it in chat, and I can, and your email address, and I can send you to those. Mainly on the main Zoom website right now, if you just go to zoom.us, they did a 2-day workshop about the education software, and you can just like see all those webinars. Like they recorded them and they're there. So I would send you that if you're specifically interested in the education account. But in chat, like there's no way, I can't monitor or approve something you write in chat. So if you go into chat and write something bad, everybody will see it. So I'm going to do that right now. I just wrote something bad, and I don't have, there's no way as the host to delete that. There's no way that I can approve it. I didn't see that Scott was about to write something bad, so if Scott was one of my students, it would just be there. So if you're working with kids, keep that in mind. I also think that's kind of the same in person, right? They could blurt out something bad, and you'd be like, oh, you just said that, you didn't run it by me. So, you know, don't be too afraid of these tools as you're working with students. And hosts can adjust chat settings. So mostly that means letting people either, you can, when I go to my little chat box next to file, there's a little ... menu, and it says I can save this chat. Y'all should have permissions to do that, I'm pretty sure, on this account. And then I can set, because I'm a co-host, I can set participants can chat with no one, so effectively turning off the chat. Host only, so if I was really worried about people writing bad things, I could be like, okay, well, you can write bad things to me, but not everybody can see them. Everyone publicly, or the way it's set right now on our amazing Greater Austin STEM Ecosystem STEM PD Day, is everyone publicly and privately. So if I wanted to text essentially a private message to Julie, I can do that by in my chat box using the everyone. Right now it's to everyone, and I can go select that little menu and then go down to just Julie and say something just to Julie. I just did that. I said good morning. Y'all don't see it, but Julie does and I do, and that is in our chat file. So if I save my chat file, it'll have that private communication. If Julie saves Julie's chat file, it'll have Julie's communication. Y'all won't see it in yours. I also, again, this is on the pro account, I don't have like a God's eye view admin that has everybody's private chat files, so I don't know. Right now, Scott and Marty might be chatting back and forth about how annoying they think I am. And like that's in their chat record, and I don't know. And I'm comfortable enough that even if that's happening, I don't expect that it is, but even if it is, I'm like, cool, that's fine. You do what you got to do. We're all showing up in the ways that we can. So that's great by me. So that's something to keep in mind. You can change the ways the chat is set. Also, I feel like it's really easy when private chat is turned on to accidentally chat to everyone when you think you're private chatting. So back to, you know, the whoops, I replied all to an email that was complaining about my boss or something. Be careful. That's just like professional advice naturally. And, you know, teach your students to be mindful about that too. Because also there's no way to like, if I send a message, there's no way to delete it from the chat. Like I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope people didn't see that. Like it's just there, just out. So keep that in mind. I think on a call, you know, even with 10 people, it really helps to have a co-host monitor the chat. Like Scott's offered today to be here and help out, which is amazing. And so if someone writes a really good question and then other people are like, yeah, me too, blah, and it gets, you know, kind of lost in scroll back, hopefully between Scott, myself, and Trisha, one of us will catch like, oh, somebody had a really great question. It's about this, and jump in and tell me that. So that really helps. I have my Zoom account set to, which is a setting in the account, to save all my chat records. So automatically, even if I'm on a call that's like me with my mom, because I'm asking her how to do that one sewing thing, which is a frequent call I have, it'll save the chat record from that. So a lot of the chats I have, a lot of the Zoom sessions I have, we don't even chat. It's just like me and my friend or whatever. And we're like, why are we using the chat? But in case someone shares their email address or an important link or says, oh my gosh, you have to listen to this amazing podcast, I'm going to put it in chat. And I'm like, who told me about that podcast? When was that? And if I figure it out, I have a chat file recorded so I can go back and see that. So it just saves a TXT file in my documents folder. They sort them in little folders by the Zoom sessions you joined. And I can go back and find all those things if I have to. So I would recommend y'all set your chat records to automatically save instead of closing the session and being like, oh no, I didn't save the chat file. I think it's a good idea to save chats when students are involved. I almost never look back at the chat records, and I'm really glad they're there in case I needed them, right? So like, especially if that's how you're doing attendance, absolutely save those chat files. And you never know, you know, you might be like, oh, somebody said something weird and I just want to look back at I think they don't understand, you know, this concept, you know, you can really dig in there and find it. I think it's useful probably at some point during whenever we can exit quarantine. I will ceremoniously delete hundreds and hundreds of chat files from Zoom calls that didn't matter, and it'll hopefully feel good and cathartic. And then I let people private chat in the sessions that I'm in, again, on my account, and that's how this session is set up too. But I also totally understand why you might not want to do that. So if you have any other questions about chat, go ahead and place them in the chat. The next feature that we just kind of demonstrated that I think is good for engagement is polling. Polls are only available on paid Zoom accounts, but they are available on the cheapest paid Zoom account, the Pro account. And they let you create a single multiple choice poll, essentially. So I launched that poll that was like, what are you most excited to learn about today? I could have another question that was, what's your favorite ice cream flavor? Or what's your favorite color? But pretty much the format is always the same. It lets you put up to 10 items, and you can either pick as many as you like or just pick one. And those are the only granularity, like types of questions you can ask. You can't ask short form questions. It's not very easy to ask a Likert scale question. So I could have had a single question for everything, how comfortable are you using Zoom? And the answers would be 1, not at all comfortable, 2, a little bit comfortable, 3, da 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 da. And then, what, what do you want to learn most about? I could have multiple that I could launch, but they have to be set up as separate polls. So in that way, I think it is good for quick engagement and participation, but it is a pretty limited assessment or evaluation tool. So if you really want to know a lot about, hey, did you get a lot out of this session? I think the last session I was in this morning, they asked, how likely are you to use things that you learned today in your work moving forward? And that was the only poll they had. And I think that's a really great assessment question. And they didn't try to launch like a full evaluation. So if you want to capture more assessment or evaluation, my recommendation is to still send out a link to a Google form, or SurveyMonkey, whatever other system you're using, because you can get a lot more complex with those. Polling is a feature you need to turn on in your Zoom account. So go to your Zoom settings, zoom.us, and go to My Account and then Settings to make sure you turn it on. Only hosts can set up polls, and then once they're there, the co-host can launch them. And you can make a poll beforehand in your meeting scheduler, or you can make it during a meeting. So like during this meeting in our break session, I asked Trisha, like, hey, will you set this poll up for me? Here's my, question and my 4 possible, answers for it. Or I could have emailed that to her way in advance, and she could have gone into the scheduler and assigned it there. And to launch polls within a meeting, the host and the co-host will have this little button in their toolbar that looks like a bar graph, and that's how polls will be launched. Any other questions about polls? Go ahead and put them in the chat or just jump off mute. Cool. Annotation is another way to do fun engagement, I think. So annotation lets participants draw or add text or marks to a shared screen, whiteboard, or anything that is being shared. So if annotation is turned on this account, y'all could annotate on top of what I'm sharing right now. And there isn't really a great way to change that. So in a minute, I'll share a whiteboard, and so we can play around with this. If you ever want to use annotation in a setting, you need to enable it in your account settings. A lot of these things are like things that you could use Zoom for, but if you don't have them turned on, it won't be in your meeting. You won't be able to turn them on from that. So I'll speak to that in a little bit. And you have to select that either everyone or only the user sharing can have annotation. So when you share a screen, there's a little pencil icon for the hosts and the co-host, and then you might have to tell your participants to go up to View Options and then select Annotate, and that will open up this toolbar that has drawing tools, text, stamps, changing the color. It's pretty rudimentary. It's big, like early Microsoft Paint vibes. Like it's not great drawing tool. It's not the best whiteboard tool. There are other, I have a list of other, like people are using Miro, M-I-R-O a bunch, and Mural, like a mural that's painted on a wall. Those are two more complex whiteboard systems. Jamboard is one that Google has that connects with Google Classrooms really well. So if you want more complexity, you might encourage your participants to use those things. Again, annotation is kind of like chat. The host can erase what anybody draws, but I don't get an approval. So if somebody, if Scott starts drawing something bad or writing something bad in annotation, it doesn't tell me like, hey, is this cool? Whatever Scott's drawing, we're going to share it with everybody. I just start seeing something being drawn and I'm like, oh God, I hope that's not what I think it is. And then I could erase it really quickly, but everybody would have seen it, if they're looking at their screens. And participants can only erase what they drew, which is kind of nice because like if it gets pretty cluttered, it could be a problem. I'm going to see if this account is set up to do annotation really quick. So I just stopped sharing the screen that we were on. And if not, I will provide another opportunity where we can play with annotation. So let me see. I'm going to open a whiteboard. Here we go with that. And yeah, I have annotation. So y'all might have to go into the little menu and go to View Options, Annotate to open up your drawing tools. Is anybody able to do that? If so, either give me a thumbs up or just start drawing. Or if you definitely can't, it might just be turned off. It might be only the person sharing can annotate. Julie, it looks like you don't have that. Yeah. Okay, cool. So I think it's probably only the person sharing. Yeah, not an option. Okay, so this account, this Zoom account is set up so that only the person who's sharing can annotate. And again, that's a thing you could change in your account settings. So the good and bad is like whenever I share my slide deck screen, if I had annotation turned on and taught you how to do View Options, Annotate, and it was turned on, you could just scribble all over my slide deck. I can erase it and I can clear everything and I can set a norm that like, hey, let's not draw on the slide deck, please. Let's only draw when we're sharing a whiteboard, but also like, there's also fun reasons to have it. I could say like, put a stamp by the thing you're most excited to learn about, or instead of sharing a whiteboard, I can share any image. If I just open up an image, like save it on my desktop, open it in preview, I can share a map of Texas or the world or wherever and be like, put a pin, put a stamp where you're calling in from today. And people can use those annotation features. So I think there are a lot of things you can do with annotation, and it's another place where you have to be trusting and just let your participants draw messy things all over. Any questions about annotation? Cool. If you have questions about any of the things we've covered or any things we haven't covered and you want to add them in chat, that's great. I will get to them and help you all out. I think the thing everybody is here for, the next thing on the slide deck is breakout rooms. I'll chat about breakout rooms for just a quick second and let you know that it's complex, and managing breakout rooms is both somewhat technical and then I think hugely social in terms of how you're inviting people into those spaces and how you're managing the expectations and facilitating like what is supposed to be done in those breakout sessions. I'm in a lot of Zoom calls. I'm in a lot that I don't host. And sometimes I'll end up in a breakout room and be like, what are we supposed to be doing? Or like half the people won't join the breakout rooms because they're like, nah, like not for me, I don't want to participate at that level. And then I'm in some with people who are very good about facilitating just kind of the social and emotional end of being thrown into a breakout room. And it's very clear what's expected. And maybe each of the rooms has a facilitator. Like that seems like a real big luxury, especially for educators this year. But a lot of it is thoughtful process. Just like we would do in person, I wouldn't just be like, okay, y'all go to your tables and start your activity without telling you what the activity was or how long we have or what you're supposed to do or the steps, right? So a lot of breakout rooms is that thinking through the support that people will be able to do successfully. And then there's like a little bit of technical stuff as well. So let me share my screen one more time to get to the breakout room slide. This is slide 19 if you're following on your own. So breakout rooms need to be turned on in your Zoom settings. Only hosts can assign folks to breakout rooms. So if we had this call and I wanted to do breakout rooms during it, which sounds great, but we only have an hour, so I'm not going to try to do breakout rooms during this session today. I might even ask that right now I'm a co-host because we're on Trisha's account. So Trisha would be the only one who has breakout room control powers. So either ideally, I would be like, okay, Trisha, can you set up 2 groups with our 18 participants? It'll be 2 groups of 9, and she could go ahead and do that. Sometimes when I'm hosting a call and I want breakout rooms, I will actually make my co-host. So if I was hosting this call and Scott was my co-host, I would actually go and make Scott a host for a minute and ask him to make me a co-host. As soon as you give up your hosting duties, you're just a normal participant. So you have to give it to somebody who you trust to make you a co-host again, or pass back the hosting duties to you. And then while I'm still presenting, Scott can be doing all of the putting people in room stuff, because it's a little bit tricky to do while you're still talking about stuff. Or I would just be like, all right, give me 5 minutes. I'm going to put you in your rooms, and then we'll come back and do that. So those are just things to keep in mind. When you go to create breakout rooms from the control bar as the host, it opens up this little window and it'll say assign how many of our participants are in the call to, and it'll start with a suggestion of rooms. So this says assign 7 participants into 3 rooms. That's what it's suggesting, and it's saying that will make 2 to 3 participants per room. If you change this number of rooms, you can say like, no, let's assign them into 4 rooms, and then, you know, one person's going to be by themselves and there's going to be, you know, pairs, or let's assign them into just 2 rooms, and it'll do the math for you, which is really nice. Like with 7, it's a little bit easy to be like, okay, but if it's like, you have 57 people on this call, how many rooms do you want? It'll just generate that suggested number. Automatically just randomly assigns people to the rooms, and then manually lets you assign people to certain rooms. So if I know like, oh God, Jared and Mario cannot be in the same room, I can exchange them and be like, okay, but Jared can go with Adrian, that's fine. You can do that even if you automatically assign. It'll just randomly generate a suggested list, and then it'll still open this window where it's like, hey, you know, do you want to move Mario out of this room or assign this other person to this other room? So that's kind of what the host controls look like. Co-hosts can leave any breakout rooms and join another one, but they have to go into the breakout room they were initially assigned to first. The host can broadcast a message to all the breakout rooms, and a window will appear in everybody's screen for 15 seconds only. So it's best to, like, if you're having lots of instructions, just be like, step 1, do the reading, you know, and then wait 3 minutes while everybody does the reading, and then be like, step 2, choose someone to share out what your questions are about the reading, or whatever that looks like. So you're not sending a ton of text, because it only appears for 15 seconds and then it disappears. I have a recommended link, again, at wildlysupportive.com/Zoom, for a 20-minute video that some friends and collaborators of mine made that actually shows the back end of hosting a breakout room on a call with like 25 participants. And it's really good. They're amazing facilitators. So if you're really looking to do a breakout room soon, I highly recommend watching that video. I also have a training later in the month. I think it's 2 weeks from this Wednesday, so in a couple weeks, where we will actually have time to play in a breakout room. So I'll share the link to that with y'all. Couple more quick screen grab things. These are the settings for breakout rooms. So you can say that all the participants move into breakout rooms automatically, yes or no. Allow participants to return to the main session at any time. Again, this is a place where you really need to be clear about what the expectation is. If they can come back into the main room, is there going to be somebody there or not, right? It's like if we were in person and it was like, okay, we're going to break up into 4 rooms and we're going to use these other classrooms and we're not going to be in the conference room anymore. sure, people could come into the conference room and be like, is Emily here? We're confused about this thing. But if Emily isn't there, it's not very useful. They're just going to be in a Zoom room empty, like an empty conference room. So that's something to think about. And breakout rooms, you can set them to close automatically, or you can close them and do your own timing. You can change that adjustment. You can be notified when the time is up. You can have a countdown after closing the breakout rooms. The default is that the countdown is 60 seconds. So you've probably been in breakout rooms where it says like, you know, like, okay, the host is calling you back to the main room. It's going to close in, and it's like times down 60 seconds. Those are some things you can adjust there. And then joining a breakout room, it'll just give you that prompt. You're being pulled into breakout room 1. You can rename the breakout room. So if you want it to be like, that's the room that's talking about mammals, and the other room is talking about reptiles, you can rename them where it says breakout room 1, breakout room 2, breakout room 3. You can click rename, and that'll rename those rooms. And the host doesn't have an omniscient view. So I don't know what's happening. Like if Julie and Marty are in a room and all they're doing is making fart noises at each other, and that's like, instead of doing the activity, I don't know unless I pop into the room and I'm like, hey, what's going on in here? Oh, fart noises. Hey, you are supposed to do your reading. So that's another good reason to have this with trusted groups, or maybe it's just a way to do fun social things, and that fart noises are a good way for your students to decompress right now. Or have facilitators or co-hosts to be in each of the rooms and report out. When you're in a room, you can always message the host that you need help, but the only announcement the host gets is it'll just say like, Leah in breakout room 2 is asking for help. And it won't tell me what Leah wants help with. It won't say, you know, Leah's sound stopped working, or Leah feels attacked by all the fart noises, or you know, Leah like doesn't know what page we're supposed to be reading. It's just like Leah needs help. So then my options as the host are either to join that room or tell Leah I'll be there later, and it'll just send a message that's like, Emily saw your message, she'll help you later. So pretty limited features as far as like actually interacting, unless you're going into those rooms. But again, your co-host can go into the different rooms too. So that is really quick in a nutshell. Breakout rooms. I know probably a lot of folks want to dig really deep into it, but again, in 1 hour, we're gonna jump to some tips for facilitation, and I'll share those resources for upcoming opportunities to dig in deep and actually play in those breakout rooms. Any questions? Again, I saw some folks asking for the slide deck. Thank you so much. And yeah. Do y'all, Andrea, when you said that it wasn't an option for you to save chat, is that like on your accounts, or is that on this meeting right here? If you want to save the chat, I think you can on this account. I was able to before. If you go to the chat window, it says ... So it's like everyone file ... and then there's like a save chat, and that'll save the chat file. So I recommend doing that. Might as well see what it's like. Yeah, cool. So for facilitation, I'm going to jump back onto the PowerPoint really quick, and this is slide number 10. And like Trisha mentioned, all of these resources will be shared out to everybody who registered and put on the Greater Austin STEM Ecosystem website after the event. So you'll have access to all of the sessions information, which is really great. For facilitation, a couple of things I wanted to highlight were spotlighting video, those nonverbal feedbacks and reactions, screen share, and share computer sound only, which we talked a little bit about. Spotlight video. So if you're on a call and the basic ways to watch a Zoom call, if there's not a screen share going on, are gallery view, which is with all the little thumbnails of everybody in the meeting, or pages of them if there's a lot of people, or speaker view, where the person who's speaking, or what's actually getting highlighted, is the person whose mic is picking up sound. So if it's kind of quiet and someone's dog is barking, Zoom might be like, well, that's the active speaker. Whoever has a dog barking, they're not on mute. That window will be bigger, and then the other participants will be on the top or along the side, depending on how your screen is set up. So as a host or a co-host, we can spotlight videos and we can say like, you know, regardless of dogs barking or whatever's happening, y'all should be looking at this person who's speaking, which is super helpful. I've been helping with a lot of craft classes and sewing workshops and things like that. So there's a lot of times where someone is holding up a tiny little thing that's like, your stitches should look like this. And so in a minute, I'll stop my screen share and show you spotlight video so that you'll actually be able to see close up, and like your students will be able to be like, oh, that's the person we should be looking at. Got it. Kind of forces their screen into that mode. It's a great way to highlight the featured speaker. Pin video, which is an option, lets you, any one of you can pin a video. If we were on this call and Marty had the world's cutest dog appear on screen and you were like, wow, Emily's great and all, but she's not the world's cutest dog. I would much rather look at that cute dog. You could just pin Marty's video, and that for you would be like the highlight video that you would see big, and I wouldn't know it and Marty wouldn't know it, and it might be kind of creepy, but also it's not actually like a good facilitation tool, because again, like if I just like wanted to look at Marty's cute dog, it wouldn't show other people Marty's cute dog. So that's the difference between pin and spotlight. Spotlight makes everybody's featured video the one, and pin is just for any one participant. So the way to do this, and again, I'll show you in a second, is when you are a host or co-host, you can go hover over that person's video and a little blue box with ... will appear. And then from that menu, you can select Spotlight Video, and a highlight bar will pop up, and that person's video will pop up big. So really quick, I'm gonna stop the share again. Thanks y'all for jumping in and out. I'm gonna just spotlight my video so I don't have to put anybody on blast. But now my video is spotlit, so it's focusing on me. You probably saw it go from gallery view, where it was all the little boxes, to mostly Emily. And again, now it's like a little bit probably easier to see if I hold something up that has tiny details and all that good stuff. Julie does have a very cute cat in her video now, so if you do want to pin that video, again, we don't know. And then I just have the option to cancel the spotlight video. So I can spotlight someone else's video or just go back to the regular thing. When you unspotlight a video, you probably notice that it's still probably in speaker view, so you might have to select gallery view up above that too. So that is spotlighting videos. I'm going to just talk about nonverbal feedback really quick and reactions instead of doing slide share, because we just played around with those at the beginning of this. So these are those things in that participant window where you can put little icons next to your name. So right now I just put up a yes, a go slower, go faster. I can do a hand clapping like that. I can do a coffee cup or mug, a time. So if you want to play with those are, again, a feature you need to turn on in your Zoom account. So they are turned on in this account, which is great. And they are somewhat limited, and definitely from the time where we only use Zoom for formal work meetings. So like go faster, go slower does not actually speed up or slow down the amount of how fast this meeting is going, but it would be like giving the presenter feedback. So maybe that's useful to tell your students, like, hey, if you understand and you don't want me to show you how to do long division one more time, tell me go faster. We'll just, you know, review it quickly and move forward. But it's not, I think it could be confusing to students, especially younger kids. It's like, I keep pushing the go faster button and it's going the same speed, or the go slower button. It's like, well, that's not how that works. So worth showing folks those things. I can clear everybody's nonverbal as a host. There is not a way to hide participant reactions from other people. Like if you see the participants window, you just see them.
Emily?
Yeah.
Did Marty's question about the host choosing spotlight, did you address that one?
I did not.
Okay,
Great, thank you.
to bring
Sorry,
that
I just
back
saw
around.
that. Yeah.
No worries.
I believe only the hosts and co-hosts can spotlight someone's video, but you can have unlimited co-hosts. So like I could literally, like the host on this call can make everybody a co-host. So if that was useful for some reason, that's a thing you can do. And probably breakout rooms is the case where that's most useful, because then people can pop in and out of different breakout rooms. I don't think it'd be that useful for spotlighting. As long as you have a couple people who could and couldn't do it, that would be fine. So yeah, defining what those icons mean in those nonverbal feedback things is useful. If you use the raise a hand reaction, if anybody wants to try that, the co-hosts don't have raise a hand and neither does the host. But all the participants do. And when you put that little raise a hand next to your name, it'll jump your name up to the top of the participants list. So it's like, oh, okay, cool. Marty has a question, which is useful. Like that just happened with Stephanie when she did it really quick. Also, as a host, I have the power, as a co-host, I have the power to lower your hand. So educators, if you've always wanted that power to lower a student's hand, you now have that in Zoom. So at least there's something. The reactions are down in the regular bar. There's like a little emoji, like smiley face. And I just found this out last night while I was updating these slides, that if you've updated to the most recent version of Zoom, they gave us some new reaction icons. So like right now I have a heart next to my name. If you are using the outdated version, which is not that outdated, it's like a couple, like maybe a couple days old, you only have clap hands and thumbs up. So you might want to update your Zoom if you are jealous of these awesome reactions that I have. Those are the ones they added are heart, crying, laughing face, the wow face, and the do ta-da thing. So again, those only appear for 5 seconds, so they're not like they just automatically disappear. So, but it's a good way to be like, all right, does everybody understand? Or does everybody, had a minute to get their book to the right page or whatever? Those are nice features to kind of orient your audience to. So that is the difference between nonverbal feedback and reaction. Slide number 13 talks about screen sharing, which we've done quite a bit. It lets hosts or hosts and participants, depending on your settings, share their screens. Because Zoom resets the view, y'all have seen this a bunch in this session already, it forces it into full screen mode when I share a screen and then forces it back to be different, and it closes the chat, and you have to reopen it maybe when you're in the screen share. I think it can be kind of jarring, especially for students or folks that aren't that familiar with Zoom yet. So think about that. And I do a lot of coaching. Hopefully you've seen that, like, okay, I'm about to share my screen, so that like it feels a little bit more grounded and oriented. I don't know if that's actually helpful. You can share your whole desktop, and then you would see all of the icons I have on my desktop. You can just share a specific application. That's what I've mostly been doing, is just sharing Firefox and the window that I've opened in Firefox. You can share a whiteboard. You can share a device from audio, content from a second camera, or an iPhone or iPad screen are the kind of default things you can share. The other thing, I think screen sharing is probably one of the most common ways that now, if there's like someone in a meeting who isn't supposed to be there or wants to do something naughty, if you don't have it set that only host and co-host can share a screen, like, again, totally don't even know this person, but if Aaron was like, I'm going to share my screen, and then showed anything on their screen, think about all of the things that are on the internet, any of those things that Aaron could potentially share and show us if this account was set to anybody can share screens. So I would say, like, my account is set to, the default is like only hosts, and it means host and co-host can share screens. And if I wanted like everybody to share, like, hey, we're going to do that thing where you all share your workout, I would just make everybody a co-host, or I'd make one person at a time. I'd be like, okay, Aaron, now it's your turn. And I'd make co-host, and then I'd take that co-host permission away. So that's how I would encourage you to set up screen sharing, just from a safety perspective. And then the last thing I have on here, which we already were talking about a little bit in break, but I'll definitely talk about it now, is I'll do it too, is share computer sound. So I really like to do this a bunch, and it is an advanced screen share option. So when I open up screen sharing, it opens up into basic, and it's like, do you want to share your desktop or Firefox or whatever else I have open? And if I click on advanced, it gives me the option to share music or computer sound only. So I just selected that, but my computer's not making a sound, but you might have noticed there's like, at the top, there's like, it probably says you're viewing Emily's shared screen or something, or Emily's sharing her screen. And since it's only sharing my audio, if I go into Spotify is what I use, but this could be off YouTube, it could be off Pandora, it could be whatever. And I can play a song for y'all. Let me see, what are we gonna play? So, and then you will be able to hear it. The thing I will tell you is that it's very, it's often my experience is that it sounds quieter in my headphones than it sounds to y'all. So it's usually a thing I run by my co-host beforehand, like, hey, am I really blasting really loud music? Because I can turn it down a little bit. So let me see, why am I having a hard time picking a song? And I would just double check that before. Now my system is pretty dialed in, like I know the place on my audio file where it's like sounds about right, hopefully. Y'all hearing some banjo that a frog might be playing. So that is how to do sound. One of the things I use this for most is for timing for activities and breaks. So I've been, among other things, using Zoom to teach or to facilitate. I'm not really teaching because I'm not the best at drawing. Making Comics by Linda Berry. And there's lots of timed activities, like spend 3 minutes drawing, you know, a picture of an imaginary friend. And so I will play a 3-minute song. I have playlists, and I'll share the links to those too, that are 2-minute songs, 3-minute songs, 4-minute songs, and 5-minute songs. And I use those to keep time for my sessions. And in breaks, quiet times, like, hey, everybody get up, get your water, take a potty break, all that good stuff, I'll play some music too. So that is also how, like, if you're taking Zoom yoga classes and things like that, they should be doing shared sound instead of doing like, here, listen to my iPhone play music through my crummy iPhone speaker in the crummy computer. Like, that's all bad. So it's easier and better quality if you do it through the screen sharing. Cool. We have about 5 minutes left. I want to make sure we have time to share all of these wonderful resources I have with you for next steps and follow-up things. So I'm going to do that very quickly. Here we go, back into screen share. One more time. So again, I'll paste these in chat, but all of my resources are at wildlysupportive.com/Zoom. I have 2 Zoom trainings coming up, and the one that's coming up in 2 weeks is really going through all of the Zoom settings. So you can access this slide deck for free whenever you want. Just go to this. It's just always there. It is pretty boring, but I think also pretty important. It is a screen capture of all of the settings in Zoom, and it tells you, like, this is the default setting, this is how it's set, or I've changed this. I don't mind if people do one-to-one chat, private chat on Zoom. And so it's like literally, like, you know, more than 20 slides of information and my feedback about that. And that's predominantly what we go through in this upcoming training that I have scheduled. So that's upcoming. And then I have another training in a couple of weeks that's the advanced features in Zoom, where we'll actually get time to go into the breakout rooms and like play around with those things. So that's on events at my website too. At any point, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. And you can also go to calendly.com/eweerts and just schedule a 30-minute appointment with me. So if y'all want to talk about like that interesting, if you want to jump on there and we can like try to troubleshoot those microphone things or any weird problems, like please feel free to jump on there and do that. It like automatically talks to my Google Calendar, so it doesn't double book me as long as I'm keeping up with my Google Calendar. So please feel free to jump on and do that. In our last 2 minutes, I'm going to stop screen share. Are there questions? We didn't get to cover all of the stuff about some usability or security stuff, but those are in that slide deck. And again, if you didn't grab it out of chat, go ahead and do that, and we'll share out those links for sure. The things I cover in usability, which is the only other one that got any votes, what is tips for the meeting control toolbar, captioning, and the short note about captioning is that Zoom, if you have captions turned on in Zoom, it would let the host assign someone to be the captioner. So in this case, Trisha Berry could tell Scott, all right, Scott, you're the captioner. And then Scott would have to type live captions to what I'm saying. And like Scott is very talented and an awesome helper. That is a huge skill set, right? So unfortunately, like I would love there to be better captioning and like automated captioning at all, even if it was not perfect. And there are some, you know, third-party devices you can connect, but right now it's not great. Do you have any quick tips on saving, managing recordings when using breakout rooms? Yeah. So the breakout rooms can be recorded, but someone has to, you know, do recording in the breakout room and set it up. So my biggest tip is that you have either a trusted student or participant or a designated co-host. And it's like, okay, Scott, you're going to be in breakout room 2. You know, Marty, you're going to be in breakout room 3. I'm going to go to breakout room 1, and make sure you start the recording. And then if you have your recording set to save in the cloud, that's better, but it doesn't have very much space for free in the pro account. So you might have to pay for more file recording, or otherwise it's going to save on everybody's own computer, and then I'd be like, okay, Scott, send me that file or upload it to this YouTube channel or whatever after the fact, which is a little bit clunky. I don't know if anybody on the call has figured out a better way to manage that. Yeah, it's a great question though. It is now 11. So thank you all so much for listening to lots and lots of Zoom tips and tricks. I hope they were useful. Please feel free to reach out.